Hey, folks, we are ready to talk about what was happening in other parts of the world while the US and the Soviet Union were in their Cold War. So we're going to talk right now about South Asia. First, got to show you where South Asia is. This is what we consider South Asia: Bangladesh, Bhutan, Nepal, India, Pakistan, and Sri Lanka. This line right here between Pakistan and Afghanistan, Afghanistan is considered part of Central Asia, just like Kazakhstan is. So this is Central Asia. This is South Asia. And the line between Bangladesh and Myanmar, over here, this is Southeast Asia. So this whole lecture is going to be about this area, but we are actually not going to mention Nepal or Bhutan at all. So we're talking about Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. But in the beginning, there was no Pakistan, there was no Bangladesh. I'm talking about the beginning of this lecture. And all of this is called India. This whole thing is British India. The British control India. Well, hopefully you guys remember when we talked about Gandhi and his whole social movement. So between lots and lots of social political unrest and Gandhi, this area gained its independence. But all of this, India, we're not talking about Sri Lanka, sorry. This part of the mainland that was British-controlled India, there were huge fights between the Muslims and the Hindus. Most of the Hindus lived here in the center, and most of the Muslims lived here and here. So India did this thing called partition. They drew a line here and here, and they called this India, and they called this part West Pakistan, and they called this part East Pakistan. And that's called partition. It's a very important word. The partition of India and Pakistan. It had all been one thing, one country under British rule. British gave them their independence, but wow, the Muslims and the Hindus hated each other. So there was partition where they drew a line and drew a line, and they said, this is India, this is West Pakistan, and this is East Pakistan. There were some serious problems. When those lines were drawn, there were Muslims that lived here in the Hindu part. And so they had to flee to Pakistan. They could go to either side. I'm just pointing up here. They fled up here to Pakistan. And then there were Hindus living in Pakistan that fled to India. And while that happened, there were these brutal murders. While Muslims were leaving India to go to Pakistan, Hindus and Sikhs, that's another religion in the area, while Muslims were leaving India to go to Pakistan, Hindus and Sikhs were murdering them along the road, just murdering the Muslims because they hated them so much. But the same thing was happening up here. The Hindus that were leaving to move to India, the Muslims were slaughtering them. Somewhere around 1 million people were killed slightly after partition. And it was for no other reason than just their religion. When the Muslims were fleeing India and going to Pakistan, Hindus and Sikhs were killing them along the way. When Hindus were fleeing Pakistan and going to India, Muslims were killing them. Almost 1 million people, maybe a little bit more than 1 million. Nobody knows exactly. Somewhere around 1 million people were killed while they were fleeing and trying to get to the country where their religion was the majority leader. There's one part up here called Kashmir, kind of here, called, no, it's more like here, called Kashmir. And Kashmir, think of Germany during the Cold War. Kashmir was split in 3 ways. China insists that this part of Kashmir belongs to them. This part of Kashmir is Muslim majority, and this part of Kashmir is Hindu majority. So there's this one state that has really kind of 3 leaders, and they're always bickering and fighting with each other. In fact, it was right about this time last year, there was a big flare-up in Kashmir. It's called Kashmir, Kashmir. There was violence here in Kashmir. There's a lot of violence in Kashmir all the time, but there was really serious violence. It made the worldwide news. And it was between China and India, because there were some fights over the border and everybody wants to control the whole thing. It's not, it's different than Germany was, because Germany, it was a clear split. The Soviet Union controls the East, the United States controls the West, done. It's not like that in Kashmir. Pakistan insists that they want total control of Kashmir. India insists they want total control of Kashmir. China insists they want total control of Kashmir. And there's violence there. All right, so that's our split of Pakistan and India, called partition. By 1998, both Pakistan and India had nuclear weapons. This is worrisome because they hate each other. I mean, seriously hate each other. And they both have nuclear weapons. Now let's go back to my map. Let me erase all this and talk about Sri Lanka. Okay, now we're talking about Sri Lanka, this island down here. It's an independent nation. It also used to be controlled by Britain, but now it has gained its independence. But down here in Sri Lanka, you've got the majority of people in Sri Lanka are Buddhist. The minority are Hindus. And so most of the government is run by Buddhists because most of the people are Buddhist. Well, the Hindus, there are Hindu separatists. Separatist. Hindu separatists that want a separate Hindu nation, kind of like they did a partition between India and Pakistan. They want to have their own Hindu-controlled part of Sri Lanka, and there's serious violence, true full-on civil war between the Buddhists and the Hindus. And in 2009, so they've had their independence since 1948. And ever since then, there has been real severe violence. Well, lots of it was just terrorist, like Buddhist terrorists blowing up Hindu neighborhoods and Hindu terrorists blowing up Buddhist neighborhoods. But at one point, the whole country was at a true civil war. And in 2009, that civil war stopped, but there wasn't any real peace. Like officially, they signed paper saying we are not at war anymore. But the violence didn't stop. It's still violent today. You still have Hindu separatist terrorists in Sri Lanka, and then you have violent Buddhists going, like when the Hindus blow something up, the Buddhists go to get their revenge. And all right, after India got its independence, they had pretty strong leadership, but they still had some serious issues that they had to work out. I don't know what you know about India's history, but India had a caste system. And if you were born into, like, there are people that are born here, and people born here, and people born here, and people born here, and people born here. These are the rich elites of society, and these are the poorest, like garbage collectors of society. And forever, India had been a caste system. People that were in this caste, their children remained in this caste. People that were in this caste, their children remained in this caste. No one married outside of their caste. They weren't even allowed to marry outside of their caste. And they had all, like there were jobs that this caste did, and there were jobs that this caste did, and so on and so forth. And these were all your rich people, and these were all your poor people. Well, with the way the new government was running, they were trying to end that. But there were still extreme discrimination against the people on the bottom, and they're called the Dalits. They were the lowest class when they're the lowest caste. It's called the caste system. And the Dalits were the lowest class. And so even though India is under this new government and the government leaders are saying the caste system is over, we are all equal, people still discriminated against them. People were violent towards them. They wouldn't let them rent their apartment because they were Dalits. They wouldn't give them jobs because they were Dalits. They wouldn't get let into school because they were Dalits. And that was a big problem. And there was also a Sikh separatist movement. Let me erase this here. And sorry. Okay. Let me pull up Punjab map. Okay, here's the Punjab. This is like a state, a region of India. Let me make that a little bigger again. Okay, so this region of India, this is where most of the Sikhs live. It's a religion, the Sikhs. And there was a big separatist movement. They wanted to have their own nation of Punjab. Well, India would not have it. At one point, Sikhs took over the Golden Temple. This was their largest religious place, is a Golden Temple. And Sikhs, I can show it to you. Let me show it to you. I go back. Okay. Golden Temple. What's happening? Why can't I don't know what's happening here. Okay. Golden Temple. Images. This is the Golden Temple. And Sikhs took it over and refused to leave and said, we are in control of Punjab now. Well, the leader, the person that was the prime minister of India at the time, her name was Indira Gandhi. No relation to the other Gandhi, no relation whatsoever to Mahatma Gandhi that we studied before, just happens to have the same last name. Indira Gandhi, she sent troops to settle down the separatists, to end their little revolt. And when she did that, her own personal bodyguard assassinated her. And he did that because he himself was a Sikh. So Sikh separatist movement was rising up in the Punjab and insisting that they have their own country. Indira Gandhi sends troops to settle it down, and then her personal bodyguard assassinates her. That was in 1984. Not very long ago, 1984. Okay, then in the late 1980s, a powerful Hindu nationalist political group, political party, gained lots of power in India, and their whole thing was they wanted to make laws that apply to everyone, laws for the nation of India based on the Hindu religion. That means that, I don't know, something that the Hindu religion teaches is wrong, they wanted to make that state law, the government. So if you break a rule of the Hindu faith, you can go to prison. And it applies to everyone, whether you're Muslim, whether you're Buddhist, whether you're Christian, whether you're atheist, no matter what. They wanted to base the laws of the country on the rules of the Hindu religion. And they openly and actively encouraged violence against Muslims. Okay, now gonna go back to the map again. Let me erase this. Okay. Let's see. Okay, it's so difficult to use this. All right. Okay, you remember, you better remember that I said this was West Pakistan and this was East Pakistan. Well, this is where the government was based, but this is where the majority of the people lived. East Pakistan, West Pakistan. So once again, I'll repeat, the government was based up here, but way more people lived down here. They were also completely different ethnic groups. And ethnic groups, that means a group of people that have the same culture. So besides the fact that they were all Muslim, they were very different people. They had the same religion, but that was about all that was the same. So there were way more people that lived down here, and they had a completely different culture than the people up here. But the people up here were the government and making all the rules. So they decided in 1971, this part, Eastern Pakistan, broke off and became the independent nation of Bangladesh. It's called Bangladesh because the majority of the people here, their ethnic group is Bengali. They are the Bengali people, and Bangladesh means land of the Bengalis. So now we have Pakistan, India, and Bangladesh. Bangladesh now, today, is one of the poorest nations on earth. It is incredibly, incredibly poor. All right, so now we're going back up here to West Pakistan, which is no longer called West Pakistan. It's just Pakistan. Pakistan has a really shaky government, even like all the way from independence till today. Things are shaky with their government. They go back and forth between having a strong military leader that bulldozes in and just takes control and says, I'm the leader now, to a completely democratically elected civilian leader. A civilian is someone that's not in the military. So they kind of flip-flop back and forth. Sometimes they have this strong dictator type military leader, and sometimes they have a civilian leader that the people elected. And just like in every country in the world, the people in the city are a bit more liberal and a bit more progressive, and the people in the countryside are more conservative and old-fashioned. Well, in Pakistan, that's taken to an all new level. The people in the countryside in Pakistan are very old fashioned and very conservative. So let's see here. When I have to erase some of this because I have to talk about Afghanistan. Part of Afghanistan's history ties into Pakistan's history. So, do you remember from the last lecture when the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan? I'm going to draw the border. This is the border between Afghanistan and Pakistan. When the Soviet Union invaded Afghanistan, lots of people fled to Pakistan. They came over here. This region of Pakistan here is all mountains, big, tall mountains like the ones here that we can see from the school, big mountains. And when they came over here to Pakistan, they joined extremist Muslim groups, extremist, like violent Islamic groups, to go back over and fight the Soviets. Once again, I told you before in the last lecture that the United States was funding these groups to help them fight the Soviets. When Russia left Afghanistan in 1989, not 18, 1989, all Russians were out of Afghanistan. And at that time, a group called the Taliban, this was an extremist Muslim group, took control of Afghanistan because their government had been completely destroyed. The Soviet Union was gone. The Taliban rose up and took control. At that time, Pakistan completely supported the Taliban. Pakistan was cool with the Taliban, supported them. Yeah, that's great. Totally take control of Afghanistan. You're going to do an awesome job. Well, the Taliban gave another group called Al-Qaeda permission to grow their group in Afghanistan. We're Muslim extremist, you're Muslim extremist, that's cool, let's run Afghanistan together. So they're both set up. But then Al-Qaeda planned the 9/11 attacks on the United States. So the 2001 9/11 attacks were planned by these extremist groups in Afghanistan. When that happened, Pakistan openly said, we do not support the Taliban anymore. We don't support the Taliban. We don't support Al-Qaeda. No, 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 no. We're friends with the United States. We do not support the Taliban. Afghanistan is not our friend. We're friends with the United States. So then the United States started their war on terror. And the United States sent soldiers into Afghanistan to try to find these terrorists that had bombed that it sent planes into the World Trade Center. And when that happened, so let me go back over here, change my color. The United States, move back. The United States is bombing Afghanistan. And now more people from Afghanistan are now fleeing into Pakistan because they're running away from the United States. But now they're getting more, they're becoming even more extremist, and they're completely against the United States because the United States is bombing them. And of course, they think the United States is trying to imperialize them, turn them into Americans, because that's what the United States does. So these extremist Muslims are coming into these regions of Pakistan, and they're forcing the people of Pakistan to follow and live by their extremist rules. And like extremist rules like women aren't allowed outside of their homes. Women aren't allowed to, like, any woman that had a job had to quit her job. Girls aren't allowed to go to school anymore. They're turning all of northern Pakistan into an extremist Muslim society. Well, the United States, that supposedly was friends with Pakistan, and Pakistan was friends with the United States. The United States told Pakistan, hey, you need to be hunting down these terrorists. Hello, these are terrorists that started a war with us. They bombed our building. They flew airplanes into our building. Like, you need to find these guys. You're our friends. We know they're hiding in your country. Find them. Well, Pakistan didn't do a very good job of that. There are some people that say Pakistan was trying. They're just so poor and so disorganized that they didn't do a very good job. And there are other people that say they weren't really trying. But either way, Pakistan didn't do a very good job of finding these terrorists. And the United States ended up finding the guy, Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden is the guy that masterminded the 2000, oh, that's not 2011, 2001. Osama bin Laden is the mastermind, the guy that came up with the whole plan for the 2001 9/11 attacks on the US. They found him hiding in Pakistan. And he, I mean, yeah, he was, they say hiding, but he wasn't really like hiding. He was just kind of like living his life in Pakistan. They found him and in Pakistan. And so today, now there is a lot of tension between the United States and Pakistan because Pakistan claimed to be friends with the United States. This group of terrorists attacked the United States, and the United States said, hey, Pakistan, you need to help us find these people because they're hiding out in your country. And Pakistan was like, oh yeah, we'll totally help you. But they didn't. And then the United States found the guy that was in charge of the whole thing hiding in Pakistan. And that's the end of this lecture.